We're doing an investigation to the Chinese biolabs, and the person that you were talking to actually works for me. About the Chinese biolabs, you're actually on video, talking about them, talking about your boss, Jim Costa. You've been recorded as part of an undercover investigation.
Yeah, I think they had a recording of the guy saying like, I'm doing parts of this because to benefit the Chinese government. I think I saw like they had like done a camera or they had like kind of secretly recorded him saying stuff. I mean, I knew for a few months before anybody else did.
Did you?
We've known for years that China's been conducting numerous nefarious covert activities right here in the United States. Secret Chinese police stations, underground transportation systems for Chinese nationals, spy and espionage rings. The Chinese even buying thousands of acres of American farmland, some of it right next to our military bases. But those offenses pale in comparison to what we have recently discovered. Convicted Chinese criminals who are active members of the Chinese military are operating secret biolabs right here in small-town America. And they're handling deadly pathogens including Ebola, HIV, malaria, TB, even COVID. Deadly pathogens that could be weaponized and used against Americans at the drop of a hat.
So does he think that it was like a bioweapon lab?
Well, they don't know. That's what they're kind of like. How many? The questions are like, how many other people are like creating like these like labs within the United States?
Well, what does your boss think about that? Like, does he think it's China?
Yeah.
Okay, what does your boss think? Like, do you think that it was like more of a national security threat?
Yeah,
He does.
Yeah.
And Congress, with the help of the mainstream media, have quietly swept it under the rug. That is until one of our brave OMG citizen journalist American swipers went undercover to investigate and hooked up on Tinder with Daniel Sepulveda, one of California Congressman Jim Costa's top staffers. And on a series of Tinder dates, well, that top congressional staffer started singing like a bird. I'm James O'Keefe, and this is OMG TV.
At a time when the public has lost all trust in the mainstream media and true investigative journalism seemed all but extinct, James O'Keefe has emerged as America's most trusted cutting-edge investigative journalist, going undercover and taking on corrupt government officials, slimy deep state bureaucrats, and greedy corporate executives who only thought they were above the law. OMG TV starts now.
So enter an O'Keefe Media Group citizen journalist who went through the O'Keefe Academy, signed up for American Swiper, and matched with a congressional staffer for Congressman Jim Costa in California's Central Valley.
So I found my subject on Tinder, and I think one reason why we use dating apps is because you get an incredible amount of data within 20 to 30 seconds.
The OMG citizen journalist met with the staffer 3 times. When the OMG citizen journalist found out that the person that she matched with worked for Congressman Jim Costa, she was very concerned about the presence of this biolab in Reedley, California, near where she was from. So the crackerjack citizen journalist, one of the best graduates of the O'Keefe Academy thus far, set the first date with Daniel Sepulveda, a congressional staffer for Congressman Jim Costa. This brave OMG citizen journalist decided to set up a series of Tinder dates and go undercover and talk about this illicit biolab occurring right under the noses of federal authorities and local authorities in California.
There was a facility in like downtown Reedley that was owned and operated by like this Chinese nationals. They were finding multiple different kinds of tests, like COVID, AIDS tests, all these different kinds of tests. They all of them were contaminated.
The Chinese were operating a biolab, and there was hardly any media attention on this, and we knew that we had to find out what was being hidden from public view. So our citizen journalist went on her first date. She was very careful because California is a 2-party consent state to record that she was in a place where it was busy, where it was noisy. It was probably a little bit too noisy. Initially, she went to a restaurant where there were too few people, and she had to find a different place where there were more people, making it legal to record in California, which is a two-party consent state to record. Sepulveda started talking to our undercover journalist about a facility in downtown Reedley, California, about 25 miles southeast of Fresno, owned and operated by a Chinese national who is on the run. Sepulveda goes into vivid detail about how the lab was testing on animals. He also talked about how they found out about this. Apparently, a meter maid walked in and saw a hose sticking out of the door that looked odd. The meter maid, who had a body camera on her body, walked in and saw all this activity, again run by a Chinese national who apparently was on the run by authorities in Canada. Sepulveda goes on to talk about how the city of Reedley, California reached out to state officials, federal officials, and nobody was returning their calls. So the city of Reedley finally reached out to Congressman Jim Costa's office, and that's where the story begins. So then they create a China Select Committee in Congress. Now, what's unusual about the committee is that there are very few Democrats. In fact, we're only aware of Jim Costa actually talking about this. It's mostly Republicans, a point that the congressional staffer Sepulveda is asked about.
Well, I mean, they're the ones who are currently in charge of Congress right now, and they're the ones who dictate what the committees are focusing on. So, like the China Select Committee, that is specifically created by the Republican Congress, and so that was what the committee wanted to focus on.
In this undercover encounter, the citizen journalist asks Daniel Sepulveda, why isn't the committee going further? Why isn't media talking about this? And why is it that hardly any Democrats are talking about it?
And then, I mean, they were going to make a bigger deal out of it. Like, they were supposed to have, like, I think it's the last time they were going to have people testify, like, have, like, the city manager really testify and in front of Congress. They were going to make a whole big thing. Like, the ticket person or the ticket lady who actually was the one who first caught the thing.
Right.
I mean, I think she kind of resolved. I mean, they're not resolved, but like the guy who was in charge of it, he's in prison now. I mean, they cleaned up the mess. So I mean, like, there's not much more to go further.
An active biolab operating in California, the citizen journalist asks Jim Costa's congressional staffer, does he think that China's responsible, and to what extent?
Well, what does your boss think about that? Like, does he think it's China?
I mean, yeah.
Congressman Jim Costa's staffer answers whether he thinks his boss believes this is a national security threat.
Okay, what does your boss think? Like, do you think that it was, like, more of a national security threat?
Yeah,
He does.
Yeah.
The citizen journalist talking about the illicit biolab operated by a Chinese national asks Congressman Jim Costa's staffer, does he think there are other biolabs in the United States?
Does he think there's more?
Well, there could be. We don't know. That's the thing. Like, it's kind of like we gotta.
Well, who's trying to figure out, like, if there is more? What's going on with that?
I don't know.
Daniel Sepulveda, staffer for Congressman Costa, talks about the existence of a recording, a secret recording of David He.
Well, what does your boss think about that? Like, does he think it's China?
I mean, yeah.
He does.
Yeah, I think they had a recording of the guy saying, like, you know, I'm doing parts of this because to benefit the Chinese government. I think I saw, like, they had like done a camera or they had, like, kind of secretly recorded him saying stuff, if I remember correctly.
The staffer for Congressman Jim Costa doesn't hesitate when asked if this is a national security threat.
Okay, what does your boss think? Like, do you think that it was, like, more of a national security threat?
Yeah,
He does.
Yeah.
The staffer for Congressman Jim Costa talks about all of the illegal substances being handled in this lab. Ebola, HIV, malaria, tuberculosis. So from the first date, our citizen journalist gathered a lot of information, and we decided that she should have a second meeting.
It was incredibly lucky that right before the second date, Congress member Jim Costa released a 42-page document to Congress explaining what was going on with the biolab.
In the second meeting, there were a couple loose ends she decided to try to find out. The congressional staffer for Congressman Jim Costa brags and gloats how he knew about the presence of this Chinese-operated biolab months before anybody else did.
I mean, all the information's out public now. I mean, I knew for a few months before anybody else did.
Did you?
Congressman Jim Costa's staffers asked in this recording, what does his boss think? And he says that his boss thinks that they're doing parts of this to benefit the Chinese government.
Well, what does your boss think about that? Like, does he think it's China?
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, I think they had a recording of the guy saying, like, you know, I'm doing parts of this because to benefit the Chinese government. I think I saw like they had like done a camera of, or they had like kind of secretly recorded him saying stuff, if I remember correctly.
Daniel Sepulveda talks about the Congressional report that his boss issued on November 14th, which happened to be the exact same day as the day President Xi from China visited California. We wonder what the odds are that the very same day this report was issued coincides with the day the president of China arrived to California. We'd like to take those odds to Vegas. By the way, given that those odds are so unlikely that the president of China would get to the United States on the very same day that the Chinese Select Committee would issue the report about the Chinese biolab in the state of California, we decided to reach out to both the Biden White House and Congressman Jim Costa directly. Now, we actually heard back from Congressman Jim Costa, who simply sent us the report. We also reached out to Joe Biden's White House for comment. You'd be shocked to know that they didn't respond to us, although they did sick the FBI on me and with guns in my apartment over Joe Biden's daughter's diary. But that's a story for another day. There was only one congressman at all who thought this was a very big deal. His name, Kevin McCarthy. He represents some of the area there in Central Valley.
And then the greatest concern that I have when you look at on the samples of the pathogens from HIV, meningitis, Ebola sitting there, the failure when it comes to the CDC. Congress should not have had to get involved here. The local representatives did exactly what was right. They reached out to the federal authorities that should deal with this. The CDC and others hung up on them, ignored them, until the Congressman Jim Costa called them. But when the CDC showed up, they should have done what was right then, and they did not. They did not test the pathogens. They did not even find all of them. They left a freezer with Ebola in it, and we know how lethal that is and what could happen, especially in the Central Valley. Watching what is going on in this lab, the testing and the mice dealing with COVID and others, we still don't have the clear understanding.
As to Congressman Costa himself, he sort of just bumbled under oath, talking about our relationship with China, I guess.
The world's changed, and we know that China is an adversary, they're a competitor, and they're a vast market, and that makes it complicated.
And that was about it. Now, looking at that report, it's missing a lot, and this is why undercover journalism is so important, because we learn from the congressman's office things that are not inside this sanctioned congressional report. Now, in that report, they talk about Jesse Xu, also known as David He. That's the Chinese national on the run from Canada who operated this illicit biolab in California. Now, in the report, Xu claimed that his fraudulent activity would, quote, help defeat the American aggressor and wild, ambitious wolf. Now, it turns out there's a kingpin attorney located in the Chinatown portion of Las Vegas who represents a lot of these sorts of people. His name is Michael Lin. So I actually went to Las Vegas, Nevada to knock on Michael Lin's door. Now, this is the Lin Law Group. I'm standing outside of Lin Law Group in Las Vegas, Chinatown, Nevada. This is the lawyer who represented the companies Universal Metaltech Inc. and Prestige Biotech. These are the companies that funded the lab. They were getting checks from China, and they ran it through these two companies. You can see here, Lin Law Group. The lawyer's name is Michael Lin. He's with Lin Law Group, represents a client who was just arrested, accused of operating an illegal lab with pathogens, including Ebola. David He is his nom de guerre. His real name is Jesse Xu. Claimed his fraudulent activity would, quote, defeat the American aggressors and wild, ambitious wolf. Now, Xu is on the run, from Canada because they issued a $330 million judgment against him for stealing intellectual property, and he showed up at this biolab. My questions for Michael Lynn, who's not at work today, is representing someone who basically wanted to help defeat America. And where are these other labs located in the United States, if they indeed exist? We want to know where they're located here. We're going to see if we can track Michael Lynn down and get more on the story. Now, since attorney Michael Lynn wasn't at the office when I dropped by and we wanted to give him the opportunity to comment, we sent one of our Las Vegas-based undercover investigative journalists to pay him a visit the next day. The office was open, but Michael Lynn didn't seem too excited to talk with us.
We're walking up to the Lynn Law Group, and we're going to see if we can get a word with Mr. Michael Lynn, who may or may not be here.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Mike with OMG Media Group. We were curious if we could get a hold of Michael Lynn to ask him a couple questions about the ongoing case with, I think his name's David He/Jesse Zhu.
I don't think he's, at the liberty of making any comments. If you want to leave a number, I can see if that's a possibility, but at this moment, I don't think so.
Not interested in making any comments?
Yeah.
Okay, I totally understand. Would it be okay if we called him again to ask, or would it for sure be a no comment?
I am pretty sure it's a no.
No comment?
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate your time
All
now.
right.
Thank you so much.
You.
Take care.
And then on the third one, James O'Keefe reached out to me and he said that he was willing to help me take this story to the next level.
So it being a 5-hour drive one way from Orange County, California to Fresno, a friend lent us his green Cessna. There were no black cars in this escapade. It was a green airplane that we took from Orange County to Fresno, took off and landed. But before we landed, we flew over the town of Reedley to get a unique aerial view of the Chinese biolab.
So we're actually right over the Chinese biolab in Reedley, California. It's right down there if you can get a shot of it. This was operated illegally in California, received $1.3 million from Chinese banks. Our undercover reporter meeting with Acosta's staff. You can look at that angled building right there. The guy just got a license to operate this thing, a Chinese national. Jesse Xu is his name. Let's get a shot right there. And the question remains, how many other biolabs are there like this? Now we've learned just recently a threat to national security. There was Ebola. There were all types of substances. Local officials really tried hard to get the CDC involved. The FBI tried to get involved, but the closed investigation because there were no, quote, weapons of mass destruction.
And I have to tell you, flying over that small American farm town, it gave me shivers to know that the people in that town did not know that that strange-looking building you're looking at, us flying over there, was actually an illicit Chinese biolab. It was very haunting. We got some great aerial shots of the facility. Before we landed in the city of Fresno, went to a local Starbucks to give some last-minute pointers and guidance to the citizen journalist before arriving at the Chinese restaurant, where the citizen journalist went in, sat down for about 20 minutes, stood up, and then I went in.
I see him.
See him, that's the guy.
See him.
Yep. About to go in.
So after landing the green plane, not black car, in Fresno Executive Airport, we go to the Starbucks, huddle for about 20 minutes, get the camera set up, get the last minute guidance, think about the kind of questions that we want to ask. We want to ask questions to get information the public does not know from Daniel Sepulveda. And then we head over to the Chinese restaurant and we park our car just outside the restaurant where we can see the back of Daniel's head. I can see his head. And I watch the citizen journalist go into the restaurant and sit down with him. Meanwhile, two of my colleagues, one of them being the pilot who volunteered his plane, gets a second camera angle. We call it B-roll, a second shot, a beautiful shot with both Daniel Sepulveda and the citizen journalist in it. I'm sitting in the car outside waiting for the moment that she walks up or I'm going to walk in. So the citizen journalist goes in, sits down, and like the first two Tinder dates, Daniel Sepulveda sings like a canary.
Well, what does your boss think about that? Like, does he think it's China?
Yeah.
Okay, what does your boss think? Like, do you think that it was like more of a national security threat?
Yeah,
He does.
So in this final meeting, Citizen journalist asked, why isn't there more media coverage on this biolab? And Sepulveda, the congressional staffer for Jim Costa, says, well, a lot of conservative right-wing outlets are talking about it.
I was looking for like more mainstream articles on it and I couldn't find anything. So why do you think that? Like no one else is covering it.
I don't know. I mean, like, I know, like, locally it's been big in the news. Like, ABC 30 did a lot of coverage on it. I mean,
Yeah.
it is kind of a local issue, and I think maybe some more right-wing conservative things have, like, picked up on it.
We're not sure what's conservative or right-wing about Chinese biolabs or concerns about them. Sepulveda also tells the Citizen journalist that the matter is kind of over, that the guy's David he's in prison, therefore nothing more really needs to be done about the matter, even though Sepulveda says in other cases that there might be other Chinese biolabs still in existence.
Kind of like how many, the questions are like how many other people are like creating like these like labs within the United States.
Now, as it turns out, David is not actually really in federal prison at all. He's in a local county jail on relatively flimsy charges that have nothing to do with the so-called national security issues that Sepulveda is saying into the hidden camera that his boss represents this is. Why is a member of the Chinese military who is a convicted criminal who's operating an illicit biolab only be sitting in a county jail with flimsy charges against him? Now, we reached out to the U.S. Attorney Phil Talbert, who handles the area there in the Eastern District of California, to wonder why they've given all these flimsy charges towards the defendant, and we're waiting to hear back from him too. So in this third meeting, about 20 minutes in, the Citizen journalist decides she has to take a phone call, stands up, and then I walk in.
And then on the third one, James O'Keefe reached out to me and he said that he was willing to help me take this story to the next level.
I sit down with Daniel Sepulveda, I take out my iPad, and I tell him that he's the subject of an undercover investigation. And the moment I show the footage of him looking at himself on the iPad, his mouth drops wide open and he gives me a look that I've never seen on the face of any subject I've ever interviewed. He gets up, goes to pay his bill, and I question him about the presence of these other biolabs. Remember, Sepulveda stated that there are probably other biolabs in the United States, and he also stated that the report is over, Congress is done, the Select Committee has no more work to do.
I mean, I think she kind of resolved. I mean, they're not resolved, but like they resolved the guy who was in charge of it. He's in prison now. I mean, they cleaned up the mess. So I mean, like, there's not much more to go further.
But I want to know what Sepulveda knows, because he told us in this undercover meeting that he knew about this months before anybody else did.
I mean, I knew for a few months before anybody else did.
Did you?
So where do things stand? David is sitting in a county jail. We at OMG have reached out to myriad officials for comment, some of whom have responded, some of whom have not. And this OMG brave citizen journalist who graduated from O'Keefe Academy and signed up to be an American swiper has just received a payday. That's right, we've paid $3,000 to the citizen journalist that obtained this video, and additional money based upon how the video performs on Elon Musk's X. Anybody who does what this citizen journalist has done and signs up to be an American swiper, goes out, takes the camera, records the story, and we decide to publish it, we will pay you an automatic $3,000. That's right. We've already had dozens more sign up to do what she has done, and they're already getting their cameras, and you can go to our website here and click on this sign up page and we'll get you all set up. So what are the tools we use as investigative video reporters? Well, there's 4 different types of cameras that we lease or sell at O'KeefeMediaGroup.com. You'll need these cameras because you can't just put your iPhone out and film. They'll know that you're filming. We have a coffee cup that's actually in the brim of a coffee cup. You can replace the plastic or paper cup with any cup at any Starbucks or coffee shop and insert it to make it customizable, and it's in the brim there. It's stationary, it's situated on the table. We also have a button camera that you can affix either in a button in your shirt, or you can take that wire and that little button and put it in a cheap bag that you can put on a table. That's what the citizen journalist in this case did when she had her camera sitting on the table. We also have a smartphone camera. Now, it's not an actual phone. It looks like a phone, but the camera is in the brim of the phone, so it sits on the desk and aims at the subject. And we have a key fob camera that can affix to your keychain, and you put it on there. Those are the 4 cameras we use. We also have backup audio. We sell an easy voice recorder. You also want to have a voice memo operating on your iPhone or Android. 2 backup audios. That's what you do. So if you're interested in becoming an undercover journalist and having some fun, making a difference, and earning some money, go to o'keefemediagroup.com/swipers.